"This is a fake," the waitress says in perfect Japanese, saving the CEO from a $100 scam. But when he discovers her real identity, his face goes pale. And, subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. Rain hammered against the Sunset Diner's frost-covered windows as Isabella Moriyama refilled coffee cups with practiced precision. The cracked linoleum beneath her feet, the flickering neon sign outside, the smell of burnt toast. This was her world now. At 29, she'd learned to make herself invisible. Table 7 was different tonight. 3 Japanese executives in impeccable suits huddled over documents, their voices low but urgent. Isabella caught fragments as she approached with the coffee pot, contract terms, deadlines, a deal worth $100 million. Her hand trembled slightly. She knew that language. She knew that world. She'd sworn never to go back. "More coffee?" she asked in English, her accent carefully neutral. The eldest executive barely glanced up, nodding absently. As Isabella poured, her eyes caught the document spread across the table. Corporate letterhead, Japanese characters, and there, a seal that made her stomach drop. That seal doesn't exist. The door burst open, letting in a gust of cold rain. Alexander Wright strode in, expensive overcoat soaked, phone pressed to his ear. Even drenched, he radiated power, the kind that came from never hearing the word no. His steel-gray eyes scanned the diner with obvious distaste before landing on table 7. "Gentlemen," he said, sliding into the booth without waiting for invitation. "Let's finalize this." Isabella turned to leave, but her feet wouldn't move. She watched Alexander spread additional documents across the table, his movements sharp and confident. The Japanese executives exchanged glances, their expressions carefully neutral. They were about to sign. They were about to lose everything. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Walk away," a voice screamed in her head. "This isn't your problem anymore." But her eyes fixed on that fraudulent seal, the irregular font, the missing registry number that only someone with her expertise would recognize. "Koreha Weiwu desu." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. "This is a fake." The diner fell silent. Every head turned toward her. The Japanese executives froze mid-gesture, shock rippling across their faces. Alexander's gaze snapped up, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief in the span of a heartbeat. "Excuse me." His voice was ice. Isabella's hands trembled as she set down the coffee pot. She'd just exposed herself. After 3 years of hiding, of rebuilding from nothing, she'd thrown it all away in 3 seconds of perfect Japanese. "The seal," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The Osaka Prefecture Commercial Registry doesn't use that format. The font is wrong. And this," she pointed to a small character in the corner, "this registration code doesn't exist in their system." The eldest Japanese executive leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with sudden intensity. He picked up the document, studying it with new scrutiny. His colleague whispered something rapid in Japanese, something about verification and corporate fraud. Alexander stood slowly, his full height suddenly intimidating in the cramped diner. "Who the hell are you?" Before Isabella could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then activated the speaker. A smooth, familiar voice filled the air, a voice that sent ice through Isabella's veins. "Alexander, listen to me carefully." Damien Cade's tone was urgent, concerned. "That waitress Isabella Moriyama, she's dangerous, unstable. She tried this exact stunt 3 years ago in Osaka, nearly destroyed a legitimate deal. She was investigated for corporate espionage and—" Isabella's breath caught. The nightmare was starting again. Alexander's eyes locked onto hers, and she watched his expression harden. Suspicion replaced curiosity. His jaw tightened as Damien's poison continued to drip through the speaker. "She'll say anything to insert herself into high-value negotiations," Damien continued smoothly. "Create doubt. Manufacture crises. Don't let her manipulate you the way she manipulated others. I'm sending you the files now." The Japanese executives were standing now, gathering their documents with rapid, agitated movements. The eldest one said something sharp to his colleagues. Verification, delay, risk assessment. Isabella felt the walls closing in. She'd saved them from a $100 million fraud, and within 60 seconds, she'd become the villain of the story. Again, Alexander ended the call, his steel-gray eyes never leaving her face. "My office. Now." I don't work for you, Isabella said quietly. Then consider it a friendly conversation. His tone made it clear there was nothing friendly about it. Unless you'd prefer I call the authorities about your little performance. Behind him, the Japanese executives were already heading for the door, casting wary glances back at her. The deal was collapsing, and somehow, once again, she was the one being blamed for telling the truth. Alexander Wright blocked her path to the kitchen, his presence filling the narrow space between tables. Rain continued to hammer the windows, creating a rhythm that matched Isabella's racing heartbeat. Explain, he demanded. How did you identify that error? Isabella forced herself to meet his gaze. His eyes were cold, analytical, the look of a man who'd been betrayed before and learned to trust no one. She recognized that look. She'd worn it herself. The Osaka Prefecture Commercial Registry uses a specific seal format, she said, keeping her voice level. The document on your table shows a modified version with incorrect calligraphy. The registration number format changed in 2023, but that seal uses the old structure with a new date. It's a sophisticated forgery, but not sophisticated enough. She watched his expression shift, surprise flickering beneath the suspicion. He hadn't expected technical precision. He'd expected excuses. Where did a waitress learn corporate Japanese? The question was sharp, probing. I studied. The lie tasted bitter. As a hobby. Hobby. He repeated the word like it was obscene. You casually studied the specific seal formats of Japanese commercial registries as a hobby? The eldest Japanese executive had stopped at the door, listening. Isabella could feel his attention, his reassessment. These men knew expertise when they heard it. They recognized authority in her words, even if Alexander refused to. Mr. Wright, the executive interjected carefully, perhaps we should verify the documents before proceeding. The concerns raised are specific, technical. Alexander's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. My team will examine everything, but I want to know. He turned back to Isabella. Why you're really here. What's your angle? Isabella's hands clenched at her sides. Angle. As if saving them from fraud required ulterior motives. I don't have an angle, she said quietly. I saw something wrong. I said something. That's all. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and Isabella caught a glimpse of Damien's name. A voice message. Alexander hesitated, then played it. Alexander, I'm sending you Isabella Moriyama's history. Damien's voice was smooth, poisonous. She's unstable, dangerous. 3 years ago in Tokyo, she fabricated evidence against her own employer, tried to sabotage a merger. She was quietly removed to avoid scandal. She's been bouncing between service jobs ever since, and every time she gets close to corporate environments, she manufactures drama. Don't let her near your deal. The words hit like physical blows. Isabella watched Alexander's expression harden further, watched the last traces of doubt about Damien solidify into certainty about her. Is any of that true? Alexander asked. It's complicated, Isabella said, hating how weak it sounded. It's a yes or no question. The situation in Tokyo was... She stopped. How could she explain? That she'd been the one who discovered the fraud, that Damien had stolen her evidence, twisted it, used it to destroy her while he pocketed millions, that she'd spent 3 years hiding because no one believed her then, and no one would believe her now. I thought so, Alexander said, interpreting her silence as guilt. The Japanese executives were conferring in rapid whispers. Isabella caught fragments. Delay the signing. Verify independently. Too much uncertainty. Alexander walked her toward the door, his hand not quite touching her elbow, but guiding nonetheless. I don't know what your game is, he said quietly, his voice for her alone. But stay away from my business. Stay away from this deal. If I see you near my company or my associates again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who Isabella Moriyama really is. The threat landed perfectly. He had no idea she'd already lost everything once. That his threat was her reality. Where did you really learn Japanese? He pressed, stopping at the door. And don't say hobby. I can have investigators pull your entire history by morning. Isabella's heart hammered. She'd rebuilt herself from nothing, new city, new name on rental agreements, new life. But men like Alexander Wright had resources that could peel back every layer. Just classes, nothing important. She hated the fear in her voice. Everything about you screams expensive education and corporate experience, Alexander said. Yet you're serving coffee in a place like this. People don't fall that far without a reason. So what's yours? Isabella pulled away from him, creating distance. "The documents are fake," she said instead of answering. "Verify them. You'll see I'm right." "Maybe." His eyes held hers. "But that doesn't explain you." He left then, joining the Japanese executives outside. Through the rain-streaked window, Isabella watched them huddle under the diner's awning, phones out, clearly beginning verification calls. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Did you miss me, Isabella?" Damien's voice slithered through the speaker. "I wondered when you'd resurface. Thought you'd learn to stay hidden. But here you are, playing hero again. It didn't work 3 years ago, and it won't work now. Stay quiet, or I'll make sure this time you lose more than your career." The call ended. Isabella stood alone in the empty diner, rain drumming overhead, hands trembling. She'd been seen. After 3 years of invisibility, she'd been seen. And the nightmare was starting all over again. Isabella's apartment was a shoebox with peeling wallpaper and a window that overlooked a brick wall. She locked the door behind her, 1 deadbolt, 2, 3. Old habits from another life, when she'd learned that danger didn't always announce itself. Her hands were still shaking. She kicked off her soaked shoes and stood in the darkness, listening to the rain hammer against the single window. The apartment was silent except for the drip of water from her uniform onto the worn linoleum. She should change. Make tea. Pretend tonight hadn't happened. Instead, she walked to the bathroom. The tile behind the toilet was loose, had been since she moved in 2 years ago. Isabella knelt, prying it free with practiced fingers. Behind it, wrapped in plastic, was a small USB drive. She'd told herself she'd throw it away 100 times. That keeping evidence of her destroyed past was like keeping a loaded gun under her pillow. But she'd never been able to let it go. Back in the main room, she opened her ancient laptop, a machine that had survived 3 moves and countless sleepless nights. The USB drive slid into the port with a soft click. Files appeared on the screen, each one a ghost from 3 years ago. Original contracts, email chains, wire transfer records, the evidence that should have saved her career. The evidence Damien had stolen, twisted, and weaponized until she became the criminal instead of the witness. Isabella's finger hovered over a folder marked Osaka Prefecture, Yamamoto Industries. Her heart stopped. Yamamoto Industries. The same company name she'd seen on Alexander Wright's fraudulent documents tonight. The same company Damien had used in the original scheme. She opened the file with trembling hands. Dates, amounts, shell companies, it was all there. The pattern was identical. Damien hadn't just survived the scandal 3 years ago. He'd perfected it. The scheme had never ended. It had evolved. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet, Isabella. I built something beautiful and you tried to burn it down once. Try again, and I'll make sure you lose everything. Again. This time, I'll make sure you never work anywhere. Never rebuild. I'll bury you so deep, no one will even remember your name. Stay. Away." Isabella read it twice, her hands clenched around the phone. Damien's words were a promise, not a threat. He'd done it before, systematically destroyed her reputation, her relationships, her future. He knew exactly how to dismantle a life, and now Alexander Wright was walking straight into the same trap. She pulled up the documents from tonight, screenshots she'd taken with her phone while the executives weren't looking, compared them against the old files. The signatures were forged by the same hand. The shell company routing was nearly identical, just updated with new names. Damien had taken his playbook and simply changed the players. Rain lashed against the window, harder now. The sound echoed the tightness in her chest, a feeling of walls closing in, of being hunted. Alexander's face flashed in her mind, the way he'd looked at her with such certainty that she was the problem. The way Damien's poison had worked instantly, turning suspicion into conviction in seconds. She knew that look. She'd seen it on faces in Tokyo when Damien's manufactured evidence had made its rounds. Colleagues who'd once respected her, treating her like she was radioactive. Isabella stood, pacing the tiny apartment. 6 steps to the wall, turn, 6 steps back. Her mind raced through options, each one ending badly. Stay silent, and Damien destroys Alexander the way he'd destroyed her. Speak up, and no one believes her, again. She had evidence, but who would listen to a disgraced consultant turned waitress? Damien had positioned himself perfectly. Wealthy, connected, credible. She was nobody. Another message. Alexander already thinks you're unstable. By tomorrow everyone will. I've been very thorough. The fear that lived in Isabella's chest, the fear she'd carried for 3 years, surged with crushing force. She remembered the meetings where former colleagues wouldn't meet her eyes, the interviews where her name preceded her, poisoned. The slow realization that Damien had won so completely that fighting back would only make it worse. But this time was different. This time she had proof. Real, documented, time-stamped proof. This time she knew the pattern. Isabella grabbed her coat, still soaked, and stuffed the USB drive into her pocket. She pulled up the business registry on her phone, searching for Yamamoto Industries' current status. Suspended. No active business license in Japan since 2023. The company on Alexander's documents didn't legally exist. She could prove it. The question was whether anyone would listen before Damien buried her again. Rain soaked through her coat the moment she stepped outside. The streets were empty, dark except for the occasional street light reflecting off puddles. Isabella pulled up her hood and started walking toward the bus stop, already mentally mapping the route to the public library. She'd need internet access better than her dying laptop. She'd need to build an airtight case. But underneath the planning, underneath the logic, one truth burned clear. She was done hiding. Damien thought he could threaten her into silence. Alexander thought she was the problem. The world thought she'd already been defeated. They were all wrong. Helena Wright had learned to read rooms the way most people read books. Years of therapy, both as patient and advocate, had taught her that tension had a texture, and Wright Global's executive floor was thick with it. She moved through the marble corridors, nodding to assistants who avoided eye contact. Her brother's company always felt cold, but today it felt different, scared. Ms. Wright, Caroline from compliance stopped her outside Alexander's office. He's in a meeting with the Japanese delegation. There's been complications with the contract. What kind of complications? Caroline hesitated, glancing around. Document irregularities. Someone raised concerns about authenticity. Helena's interest sharpened. Alexander didn't tolerate irregularities, which meant someone had made him doubt himself, not an easy feat. She spent the next 20 minutes wandering the building, listening. Helena had learned that people talked freely around her, assuming her past struggles made her somehow less threatening. It was a mistake she'd stopped correcting. In the break room, 2 junior analysts were huddled over a phone. "Did you see the video?" one asked. "Some waitress tried to sabotage Wright's Japanese deal. Damien Cade sent evidence that she's done this before." "Cade's that investor who partnered on the Osaka expansion, right?" "Yeah. Apparently this woman, Isabella something, she tried to blackmail companies in Tokyo 3 years ago. Now she's working at a diner and pulled the same stunt. Wright had her thrown out." Helena moved closer, catching a glimpse of the screen. Security footage from what looked like a cheap diner. A young woman with dark hair, gesturing at documents on a table. Even in the grainy video, Helena could see the precision in her movements, the way she pointed to specific sections, her body language confident and exact. That wasn't someone making trouble. That was someone who knew exactly what she was looking at. "Who is she?" Helena asked. Both analysts jumped. "Ms. Wright, we didn't." "The woman in the video, who is she?" "Isabella Moriyama," the first analyst said reluctantly. "But Mr. Cade says she's not credible. She has a history of—" "Let me see that." Helena took the phone, watching the footage again. Isabella's face was partially obscured, but her eyes were visible, sharp, focused, afraid. Helena had spent years learning to recognize genuine emotion versus performance. This woman wasn't performing. She handed back the phone and headed straight for Alexander's office. He was alone, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Los Angeles. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the city lights below. "The Japanese delegation postponed the signing," he said without turning. "They want independent verification of the documents. It's going to delay everything by weeks." "Because of the waitress?" Alexander turned, his expression hard. "Because of a woman who apparently specializes in disrupting high-value deals. Damien sent me her file. She's done this before." "Show me." Alexander pulled up documents on his tablet, emails, incident reports, a damning summary of Isabella Moriyama's professional collapse in Tokyo. Helena read carefully, her therapeutic training kicking in. She'd learned to spot narrative manipulation. This file was too clean, too complete, too perfectly damning. "Something's wrong with this," she said. "Helena, no, listen to me." She set down the tablet. "I saw the video. That woman wasn't trying to sabotage anything. She was trying to help. You can't possibly know that from security footage. I know body language. I know fear. Helena met her brother's eyes. She was terrified, but she spoke up anyway. That's not someone running a con. That's someone who knows something. Alexander's jaw tightened. Damien has been feeding you a story. Helena picked up the tablet again, scrolling through the file. Look at the sources. All of this comes from Damien's independent investigation. None of it includes Isabella's side. No statements from her. No rebuttal. Just a perfectly constructed narrative of a disgraced woman with nothing to lose. You're being paranoid. I'm being careful. Helena's voice sharpened. You weren't at the table. I watched the footage 3 times. She identified specific technical flaws in those documents. She used precise terminology. That's not someone making things up. That's someone with real expertise. Alexander turned back to the windows. Even if she was right about the documents which we're verifying, that doesn't make her trustworthy. It makes her worth listening to. The silence stretched between them, old and familiar. They'd had versions of this argument before, Helena pushing for empathy, Alexander retreating behind logic and control. Their parents' death had fractured them differently. Helena had learned vulnerability. Alexander had learned paranoia. She lied about her background, Alexander said finally. Said she learned Japanese as a hobby. No one masters corporate legal terminology as a hobby. Maybe she had a reason to hide. Or maybe she's exactly what Damien says she is. Helena studied her brother's reflection in the rain-streaked glass. His shoulders were tight, his jaw set. He'd already decided. Damien's narrative had settled into certainty. I'm going to find her, Helena said quietly. Helena, don't. Someone needs to hear her side. If she's lying, we'll know. But if she's not, Helena paused. If she's not, then Damien just convinced you to silence the one person trying to save you from a massive fraud. She left before Alexander could argue further. In the elevator, Helena pulled out her phone and searched for Isabella Moriyama. No social media, no professional profiles, just scattered references to a corporate scandal in Tokyo 3 years ago. All of them vague, all of them damning. Someone had worked very hard to erase this woman. Helena screenshot the diner's address from the security footage. She had a feeling Isabella Moriyama was about to become very important. Isabella stood in the gleaming lobby of Wright Global, clutching a manila envelope that contained printouts of everything. The original contracts, the shell company records, the timeline connecting Damien's old fraud to the current scheme. Her hair was still damp from the rain, her waitress uniform hidden under a thrift store blazer that didn't quite fit. She'd spent all night at the library, building an airtight case. Now she just needed someone to listen. I need to speak with Alexander Wright, she told the security guard at the marble reception desk. It's urgent. It's about the Japanese contract. The guard, tall, professionally blank, didn't even look up. Mr. Wright doesn't take walk-in appointments. I understand, but this is about fraud. Active fraud. He's about to sign documents that... Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave. Isabella's heart hammered. Please just call upstairs. Tell him Isabella Moriyama has evidence about Yamamoto Industries. 5 minutes. That's all I need. The guard finally looked at her, his expression shifting to recognition. You're the one from the diner. He picked up his phone, speaking quietly into it. Isabella caught only fragments. Yes, sir. The woman from last night. She's insisting. Hope flickered. Maybe Alexander would listen. Maybe, Mr. Cade has instructed that you're not to be allowed in the building, the guard said, hanging up. You need to leave. Now. Isabella's breath caught. Damien Cade doesn't work here. This is Alexander Wright's company. I need to speak with Wright, not... Mr. Cade is a senior partner in the Japanese venture. His instructions are clear. The guard stood, his bulk suddenly intimidating. Leave, or I'll call the police. Across the lobby, elevator doors opened. Alexander Wright stepped out, phone to his ear, flanked by 2 executives. His eyes swept the space and landed on Isabella. His expression hardened instantly. Mr. Wright, Isabella called out, desperation cracking her voice. Please, just look at these documents. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Alexander crossed the lobby in long strides, his face a mask of cold fury. I told you to stay away from my business. You're about to sign a fraudulent contract, Isabella said, holding out the envelope. Yamamoto Industries doesn't exist. The shell companies routing the money are. Security. Alexander cut her off, his voice sharp. Remove her from the building. Please. Isabella's hands trembled. Just look at the evidence. I have proof that Damien... Damien warned me you'd try this. Alexander's tone was ice. Creating chaos, manufacturing crises. It's what you do, isn't it? How many companies have you targeted with these schemes? The lobby had gone quiet. Isabella became aware of faces watching from the mezzanine level, employees with phones out, recording. The security guard's hand closed around her arm. "Let go of me," Isabella said, trying to pull away. "I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm trying to prevent—" "You're harassing our CEO," the guard interrupted. "That's trespassing." "I came to deliver information." Isabella's voice rose, panic threading through it. "Information that could save this company millions, if you would just listen." "Get her out," Alexander said coldly, already turning away. "And if she comes back, call the police. Press charges." The guard yanked Isabella toward the door. She stumbled, her envelope spilling to the marble floor. Papers scattered, contracts, emails, evidence that no one would see. Employees on the mezzanine leaned over the railing, phones capturing every moment of her humiliation. "You're making a mistake," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "Damien is using you. He did this to me 3 years ago, and now he's— Enough!" Alexander's voice cracked like a whip. He'd stopped, turned back. His steel-gray eyes were full of contempt. "I don't know what your endgame is, but you picked the wrong target. My lawyers will be in contact about a restraining order. Stay away from me, my company, and my business partners. Am I clear?" The guard pulled Isabella through the revolving doors and into the rain. She landed hard on the wet pavement, her hands scraping concrete. Behind her, the glass doors sealed shut like a judgment. Isabella knelt there, rain soaking through her cheap blazer, and watched her evidence float in puddles. Inside the lobby, employees were already dispersing, laughing, sharing videos. She'd become a story, the crazy woman who tried to scam Alexander Wright. Her phone buzzed. A video message from an unknown number. Isabella's hands shook as she opened it. The video was edited footage from the lobby, but cut to make it look like she was screaming threats, demanding money. Damien's voice narrated over the images. Isabella Moriyama, previously investigated for corporate extortion in Tokyo, attempting the same scheme in Los Angeles. Mr. Siu. Wright acted appropriately in having her removed. The video was already spreading. She could see the view count climbing, hundreds, then thousands. Another message from Damien. "Did you really think you could fight me? I have resources, connections, credibility. You have nothing. This is what happens when you don't stay down. By tomorrow, every company in LA will know your name and why to never let you through the door." Isabella sat on the wet sidewalk, clutching her phone as rain poured down. Pedestrians hurried past, avoiding eye contact. She was invisible again, but this time, it was worse. She wasn't just hidden. She was marked. The USB drive was still in her pocket, full of truth that no one would see. Inside Wright Global's lobby, Alexander stood at the windows, watching Isabella's figure disappear into the rain. His phone buzzed with the video Damien had sent, the same edited footage showing Isabella as unhinged, dangerous. Helena's words echoed in his mind. She was terrified, but she spoke up anyway. He silenced the thought, but somewhere deep in his chest, doubt whispered. Helena Wright's hands flew across the keyboard, her security clearance giving her access to systems most employees never saw. The IT department was empty at 11 p.m., exactly as she'd planned. On the screen, Damien Cade's personnel file glowed with inconsistencies, employment dates that didn't align, references from companies that had gone bankrupt suspiciously soon after Damien left, and most damning metadata on the documents he'd sent about Isabella Moriyama. The files had been created yesterday, all of them. The investigation Damien claimed to have conducted 3 years ago had been manufactured in the last 48 hours. Helena screenshot everything, her heart racing. She'd watched her brother dismiss Isabella's warnings. She'd seen the lobby footage, both the real version and Damien's edited propaganda. Something was very, very wrong. Her phone buzzed. "Alexander." "Where are you?" Helena ignored it, drilling deeper into Damien's communications. She found email chains about the Japanese contract, routed through offshore servers, references to shell companies, and there, buried in an archived folder, a connection to Yamamoto Industries from 2022, the same company from Isabella's scandal. "What are you doing?" Helena jumped. Alexander stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Looking at what you refused to see," Helena said, turning the monitor toward him. "Damien's file on Isabella. It was created yesterday. Every document, every evidence file, manufactured in the last 2 days. Alexander's jaw tightened. That doesn't mean what? That maybe the woman you had thrown out on the street was telling the truth? Helena's voice sharpened. Look at this. Really look. She pulled up the metadata reports, the timeline discrepancies, the shell company connections. Alexander moved closer, his eyes scanning the screen. Helena watched his expression shift, doubt cracking through certainty. Why would Damien fabricate evidence? Alexander asked, but his voice had lost its conviction. Why would Isabella risk everything to warn you? The question hung between them. Alexander pulled out his phone, making a call. Michelle, I need the compliance team in my office.
Now, full audit of the Yamamoto Industries documents, and pull everything we have on Damien Cade's background verification. He ended the call and looked at Helena. If you're wrong, I'm not. 2 hours later, Alexander's office looked like a war room. Michelle from compliance had spread documents across every surface, her face pale with growing horror. The Yamamoto Industries seal is fraudulent, she said, her voice tight. The registration numbers don't exist in any Japanese commercial database. The parent company dissolved in 2023, and the wire transfer routing, she pulled up a diagram, runs through 3 shell companies in the Cayman Islands before disappearing into accounts we can't trace. Alexander felt his stomach drop. How much? The initial payment was supposed to be $20 million. Non-refundable good faith deposit. Michelle's hands trembled slightly. If we'd signed, that money would have vanished, and the contract terms would have obligated us for another $80 million over the next 18 months. $100 million. Gone. And Isabella Moriyama? Alexander's voice was barely audible. Michelle pulled up another file. There's no criminal record, no lawsuits, no professional sanctions. The investigation in Tokyo that Damien referenced doesn't exist in any official capacity. But I did find this. She displayed an archived news article from 2022. Yamamoto Industries was involved in a fraud scandal. A junior consultant named Isabella Moriyama was the whistleblower. She provided evidence that executive Damien Cade was embezzling through false contracts. The room tilted. Alexander gripped the edge of his desk. The case was settled privately, Michelle continued. Sealed records. But Moriyama's name was leaked to the industry. Her reputation was destroyed by rumors before the truth could surface. Cade was quietly removed but faced no charges. He moved to the U.S. 6 months later and rebuilt his career. Targeting me, Alexander said, the realization crushing. Helena stood by the windows, arms crossed. She tried to warn you. Twice. And you had her thrown out like garbage. Alexander's phone showed the video from the lobby, Isabella on the wet pavement, papers scattered around her, her face a mask of devastation. He'd done that. He'd chosen Damien's lies over her truth. The guilt was physical, a weight in his chest that made breathing difficult. Find her, Alexander said. I need to find her. It's almost 2 a.m., Michelle said. I don't care. Find her address. I need to. Alexander stopped, running a hand through his hair. I need to apologize. I need to make this right. 40 minutes later, Alexander stood outside Isabella's apartment building in the rain. The neighborhood was rough, chain-link fences, broken streetlights, graffiti on every surface. This was where she'd been living while he'd thrown her warnings back in her face. He climbed 3 flights of stairs to apartment 2C and knocked. Isabella, it's Alexander Wright. I know you have no reason to listen to me, but please, I was wrong. About everything. The documents were fake. Damien is running a fraud. You were right. You tried to save me and I. His voice cracked. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Silence. I verified everything. The shell companies, the fake seal, the Tokyo scandal. I know what he did to you. I know I did exactly what he wanted. I chose his lies over your truth, and Alexander pressed his forehead against the door. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The door opened slightly, the chain still engaged. Isabella's face appeared in the gap, eyes red from crying. You humiliated me, she said quietly, in front of everyone. Again. I know. You didn't even ask my side. You just believed him. I know. Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. I've spent years being paranoid about betrayal. It made me blind to the real threat. Damien manipulated that. He knew exactly which buttons to push. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. Alexander met her eyes. But I'm asking, begging for a chance to fix this.
To help you get justice. To stop Damien from ever doing this again. Isabella's expression hardened. I don't need your help. I've fought alone before. And it destroyed you. The words were harsh but true. Isabella's hand tightened on the door. This time is different, Alexander said. This time you have evidence, resources, and me, if you'll accept it. We can stop him, together. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Alexander's voice was raw. But I'm asking you to let me earn it. Please. Isabella stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she closed the door. Alexander stood in the hallway, rain dripping from his coat, listening to the sound of 3 deadbolts sliding into place. He'd failed. Again. But through the door, he heard Isabella's voice, barely a whisper. Come back tomorrow, with proof of what you found. Then we'll talk. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a chance. Alexander returned at exactly 9 a.m. holding a leather portfolio and 2 cups of coffee from a place that wasn't Starbucks. No bodyguards. No designer suit, just jeans and a simple coat that made him look almost human. Isabella opened the door without the chain this time. I brought everything, Alexander said, holding up the portfolio. Compliance reports, metadata analysis, shell company documentation. And he offered one of the cups. I didn't know how you take your coffee, so I got it black. Isabella took the cup, studying his face. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something raw, exhaustion, guilt, determination. She'd seen enough calculated apologies to recognize genuine remorse. There's a diner 2 blocks from here, she said. Closed on Sundays. The owner lets me use it sometimes. They walked in silence through empty streets. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and gray. Alexander didn't try to fill the quiet with excuses. Isabella noticed that. Noticed how he matched her pace instead of striding ahead. Small things that spoke louder than words. The Sunset Diner was dark except for the emergency lights. Isabella unlocked the back door, the owner trusted her with a key, and they settled into a booth by the windows. Alexander spread documents across the Formica table, and Isabella pulled out her USB drive. This is what Damien did in Tokyo, she said, plugging the drive into Alexander's laptop. Files populated the screen, original contracts with legitimate Yamamoto Industries, then the forged versions Damien had created. He embedded himself in the deal, gained trust, then slowly replaced real documents with fakes. By the time anyone noticed, the money was gone, and he'd positioned me as the scapegoat. Alexander studied the files, his jaw tightening. The pattern is identical to what he tried with me. Because it worked once. Isabella's voice was steady, clinical. I was young, ambitious, easy to discredit. You're established, powerful, but he found your weakness. Which was? Paranoia. Isabella met his eyes. He knew you'd been burned before. He knew you'd trust someone who warned you about threats. So he made me the threat. Alexander leaned back, something cracking in his carefully maintained control. Damien saved my company 3 years ago. Or that's what I thought. We were facing a hostile takeover, and he connected me with investors who made it disappear. I've been grateful ever since. Let me guess, Isabella said. Those investors were connected to shell companies in the Cayman Islands? Alexander's expression answered before his words did. You think the whole thing was manufactured. I think Damien creates problems so he can solve them. It builds loyalty, makes people overlook inconsistencies. Isabella pulled up another file. In Tokyo, he discovered accounting errors that made the CFO look incompetent. Guess who recommended his own auditing firm to fix it? And skimmed millions in the process. Exactly. They worked through the documents for 2 hours, building connections, mapping the pattern. Alexander's mind was sharp. Isabella watched him make intuitive leaps that would have taken her hours to reach. Despite everything, she found herself respecting his intelligence, maybe even trusting it. I need your help, Alexander said finally. There are additional Japanese documents I can't fully decode. Technical legal terminology that requires someone who specialized in cross-border compliance. Isabella finished. Someone like me. Yes. Isabella traced the rim of her coffee cup, cold now. Why should I help you? You have resources. Hire a translator. Because this isn't just about stopping Damien. Alexander's voice was quiet. It's about clearing your name. The real story needs to come out. What he did to you. What he tried to do to me. You deserve that. The words hit something deep in Isabella's chest. For 3 years, she'd hidden, rebuilt, survived. No one had offered her vindication. No one had believed she deserved it. Justice?
she said, testing the word. Or revenge? Both. Alexander didn't flinch from the honesty. He tried to destroy us both. I want him to face consequences, don't you? Isabella thought of the lobby, the scattered papers, the video spreading across the internet, the humiliation that had cracked something fundamental inside her. Yes, she admitted. I do. The diner door opened. Helena Wright entered, carrying a box of files and an expression that said she'd brook no arguments about being here. I'm in, Helena announced, setting the box on the table. Alexander filled me in last night, and I brought internal communications showing employees who raised concerns about Damien being silenced. She looked at Isabella. I'm sorry for what my brother did, and I'm sorry the company failed you, but we're going to make this right. Isabella studied Helena, reading her body language, her tone. The sincerity was unmistakable. You don't owe me anything. No, but I owe it to everyone Damien has hurt. Helena sat down. And I'm good at organizing chaos. Let me help. Over the next hour they built a plan. Helena would collect internal testimonies. Alexander would secure legal documentation. Isabella would translate and verify every Japanese document. But they needed someone with media credibility, someone who could present the story in a way that couldn't be dismissed. Miguel Torres, Isabella said suddenly. He's an investigative journalist who covered the original Tokyo scandal. He was one of the few who questioned the official narrative. Alexander pulled out his phone. How do we reach him? I'll contact him. Isabella's hands trembled slightly. He might remember me. He tried to interview me back then, but I was too scared to talk. And now? Helena asked gently. Now I'm done being scared. 3 days later, Miguel Torres sat in Alexander's private office, his weathered face thoughtful as he reviewed the evidence. At 62, he'd built a reputation for taking down corporate fraudsters. His eyes lit up as the pieces fell into place. This is bigger than I thought, Miguel said. Damien Cade has been running this scheme for at least 5 years, possibly longer. Multiple companies, multiple countries. You're not his only victims. You're just the ones who fought back. Can you publish it? Alexander asked. I can do better than publish it. Miguel's smile was sharp. Wright Global's annual gala is in 2 weeks. International press, business leaders, live-streamed globally. What if we presented the evidence there? Live, undeniable, with Damien in the room. Isabella's breath caught. He'd never admit to anything. He won't have to. Miguel tapped the documents. We let the evidence speak. Timeline, documents, testimony. Then we offer him a choice, face criminal charges or confess publicly. Alexander looked at Isabella. It's your call. You've hidden long enough. If we do this, there's no going back. Your name will be everywhere. Isabella thought of 3 years in shadows. 3 years rebuilding from nothing. 3 years letting Damien win. Let's burn it all down, she said. Miguel Torres spread Isabella's USB drive contents across his dining room table like a surgeon preparing for a critical operation. 20 years of investigative journalism had taught him to spot authentic documents, and these were immaculate. Original contracts, time-stamped emails, wire transfer confirmations, Miguel muttered, making notes. Isabella, these are pristine. Chain of custody is clear. This is criminal evidence. Isabella sat across from him, her laptop open to translated documents. Damien threatened me for years to keep these hidden. I was too afraid to use them. You're not afraid anymore. No. Isabella's voice was steel. I'm not. Alexander arrived an hour later with Helena and 3 bankers' boxes full of Wright Global's internal records. Michelle from compliance had worked overtime pulling metadata on every document Damien had touched in the past 3 years. The email timestamps don't match, Alexander said, spreading printouts across Miguel's table. Damien claimed he received the Yamamoto documents from the Japanese delegation on October 15th, but the metadata shows he created them on October 12th, 3 days earlier. He forged them before the meeting even happened, Miguel said, photographing everything. That's premeditation. Helena contributed her findings next, internal messages from employees who'd questioned Damien's recommendations. 6 different people had raised concerns over 18 months. All had been reassigned, demoted, or quietly let go. Systematic silencing, Helena said, her voice tight with anger. He isolated anyone who might expose him. Isabella worked through the Japanese documents with surgical precision, her translations revealing the scope of Damien's scheme. The fake Yamamoto Industries was connected to shell companies in Tokyo, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands.
Money would flow through legitimate-looking channels before vanishing into accounts that couldn't be traced. "He's done this at least 4 times," Isabella said, cross-referencing dates. 4 companies, 4 different countries. Combined losses of over $300 million. Miguel whistled low. "This isn't just fraud. This is organized crime." They worked for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and takeout. Alexander's penthouse became their war room. Walls covered in timelines, documents color-coded by category, evidence chains mapped like battle plans. On the 4th day, things changed. "Someone's accessing the right global servers," Michelle said, her laptop screen flashing red alerts. "Unauthorized login. They're trying to delete files from the Japanese contract folder." Alexander was at her side instantly. "Can you trace it?" "Working on it, got it." "IP address routing through a VPN, but the physical location is—" Michelle's face paled. "It's Damien. He's in his office right now trying to erase evidence." "Block him," Alexander ordered. "Lock down everything he has access to." Michelle's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Blocking? Blocked. He's locked out. But, Alexander, he knows we're investigating. This makes us vulnerable." "No." Alexander's voice was cold. "This makes him desperate." Miguel grinned. "Desperate people make mistakes. Get me screenshots of his deletion attempts. That's consciousness of guilt." Over the next 2 days, Damien made his counter-moves. He contacted Right Global employees, offering promotions and bonuses for loyalty. He reached out to journalists with carefully edited videos of Isabella, making her appear unstable, dangerous. He even filed a defamation claim against Alexander for spreading false allegations. "He's trying to control the narrative before we can," Helena observed. "Let him," Isabella said quietly. She was reviewing the final dossier Miguel had assembled, 140 pages of evidence, organized chronologically with clear visual aids. "The truth is stronger than his lies. We just need to present it right." Miguel had structured the presentation like a legal brief, opening with the Tokyo scandal, showing how Isabella had been framed, then connecting it to Alexander's near disaster with the fake Yamamoto contract. Finally, revealing the larger pattern: 4 companies, $300 million, 5 years of systematic fraud. "The gala is in 3 days," Miguel said. "Right Global's annual International Business Summit, live-streamed to 40 countries, attended by every major business publication. If we present this there, Damien can't bury it. He'll try to stop us," Helena warned. "He'll try." Alexander's expression was grim. "But Right Global is still my company. I control the program. And I've already added a last-minute keynote address, myself and Isabella, discussing corporate fraud prevention." Isabella felt her stomach clench. "I'm not a public speaker." "You don't need to be." Alexander met her eyes. "You just need to tell your story. I'll handle Damien." The night before the gala, they ran through the presentation one final time. Isabella's hands trembled as she watched her life reduced to PowerPoint slides, the Tokyo scandal, the false accusations, the 3 years of hiding. But between the slides were documents, proof, undeniable truth. "This is going to change everything," Helena said softly. "Once this goes live, you can't hide anymore." "I don't want to hide," Isabella said. "I'm done being invisible." Miguel closed his laptop. "Then let's make sure tomorrow the whole world sees you." Across town, Damien Cade stood in his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it costs," he snarled. "I want that gala shut down. Equipment failures, fire alarms, anything. Alexander thinks he's going to expose me? I'll burn his entire company to the ground first." The person on the other end spoke quietly. Damien listened, his expression shifting from rage to calculation. "Good," he said finally. "Make it look like an accident, and make sure Isabella Moriyama is there when it happens. I want her destroyed, permanently." He ended the call and poured himself scotch, staring out at the Los Angeles skyline. He'd built an empire on manipulation and fraud. No disgraced consultant and her new allies were going to take that away. Tomorrow, one way or another, this ended. The Right Global International Summit ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and power. Delegates from 40 countries filled the space, business leaders in designer suits, journalists with cameras ready, the Japanese delegation seated prominently at the front. This was Alexander Wright's kingdom, and tonight he was about to set it on fire. Isabella stood in the wings, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wore a simple black dress Helena had insisted on buying, elegant, professional armor against what was coming. Her hands clutched note cards she'd prepared, though she'd memorized every word days ago. "You ready?" Miguel asked beside her, his camera equipment already rolling. "No," Isabella admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." On stage, Alexander approached the podium. The room quieted instantly. When Alexander Wright spoke, people listened. "Good evening. Before we proceed with tonight's program, I need to address a critical matter regarding Wright Global's recent international ventures." Isabella watched Damien Cade at his table near the front, his expression perfectly controlled. Expensive tuxedo, confident smile, the picture of success, but his eyes tracked Alexander with predatory focus. "We've discovered significant irregularities in our proposed Japanese contract," Alexander continued. "Irregularities that, if left unaddressed, would have cost this company and our investors over $100 million. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Damien's smile didn't falter, but his hand tightened around his champagne glass. Isabella felt a presence beside her in the wings. Damien had moved with terrifying speed, somehow appearing without anyone noticing. His cologne was familiar, expensive. It made her stomach turn. "Still playing hero?" he whispered, his voice silk over razors. "You think one presentation will change anything? I've already contacted 6 journalists with evidence of your instability. By tomorrow you'll be a cautionary tale about conspiracy theorists." Isabella forced herself to look at him. "The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence can be reinterpreted, especially when it comes from a disgraced consultant with a grudge." Damien's smile was cold. "Walk away now, Isabella. Disappear again. Or I promise you, what I did 3 years ago will look merciful compared to what comes next. Step away from her." Helena Wright appeared like a guardian angel in ice blue silk. Her voice carried steel. "Now." Damien's expression flickered, annoyance, then calculation. "Helena, I didn't realize you were part of this little rebellion. I'm part of the truth." Helena positioned herself between Isabella and Damien. "And if you threaten her again, I'll make sure every person in this room knows exactly what you said." Empty threats from someone who has recording equipment in her purse and has been streaming this conversation to the AV booth. Helena held up her phone, screen showing a live feed. "Try again." Damien's mask cracked. For 1 second, Isabella saw pure rage beneath the polish. Then the lights flickered. The ballroom plunged into darkness for 3 seconds, long enough for panic to ripple through the crowd. When the lights returned, they were dimmer, unstable. The massive screen behind Alexander's podium showed static. "Technical difficulties," Damien announced smoothly, standing. "Perhaps we should postpone this discussion until—" "No postponement." Miguel Torres emerged from the wings, microphone in hand. "I anticipated technical interference. That's why I have backup systems recording everything, including the attempt to sabotage this presentation." The screen flickered again, then stabilized, showing not static, but crystal clear footage. Damien's face appeared, time-stamped 2 hours ago, speaking on his phone. "I want that equipment shut down. I don't care how. Make it look like an accident." The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Damien's expression transformed, smooth confidence shattering into barely controlled fury. "That recording is taken out of context, falsified. This is exactly the kind of manufactured." "Silence." Alexander's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The room obeyed instantly. "Miguel, proceed with the full presentation. Isabella." He extended his hand toward the wings. "Please join me." Isabella's legs almost didn't work, but she forced herself forward across that stage, into the light and the stairs and the cameras. Alexander met her halfway, his expression showing both apology and respect. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander said, "this is Isabella Moriyama. 3 years ago, she exposed a corporate fraud scheme and was destroyed for it. Tonight, she's going to tell you the truth." He handed her the microphone. Isabella's mouth was dry. She looked out at hundreds of faces, journalists, executives, the Japanese delegation watching with intense focus. Then she looked at Damien, standing now, his face a mask of controlled rage. 3 years ago, Isabella began, her voice steadier than she felt, "I discovered that Damien Cade was embezzling through fraudulent contracts with a Japanese company called Yamamoto Industries." The screen lit up behind her, original documents, side-by-side comparisons showing the forgeries. He used sophisticated techniques to create false seals, fake registration numbers, and shell companies to route money offshore. Isabella advanced the slides,
her hands surprisingly steady now. The Tokyo company lost $80 million. When I reported it, Damien manipulated the evidence to frame me as the perpetrator. And more documents appeared, emails with altered timestamps, false accusations, the manufactured case against her. Last week, Damien attempted the identical scheme against Wright Global. Same company name, same fake seals, same shell companies. Isabella's voice strengthened. The only difference was that this time I recognized the pattern. The Japanese delegation was leaning forward, conferring rapidly. One of them, the eldest executive from the diner, stood. "Ms. Moriyama," he said in precise English. "You identified our fraudulent documents at the Sunset Diner, correct?" "Yes, sir." "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Isabella felt the weight of 3 years pressing down. "Because I was afraid. Because Damien destroyed my reputation so completely that I thought no one would believe me." She looked directly at the executive. "But I was wrong. Silence doesn't protect you. It only protects predators." The applause started slowly, first from Helena, then spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. Damien moved then, striding toward the stage with violent intent. "This is defamation. I will sue every person in this room who—" Security blocked his path, but Damien shoved past them, reaching the stage steps. "Get your hands off me," he snarled. "You have no authority to—" "Actually," Alexander said calmly, "this is my company, my event, and you're no longer welcome." 2 security guards grabbed Damien's arms. He fought, all polish gone, replaced by raw desperation. The cameras captured everything. "Roll the footage," Miguel said into his headset. The screen behind Isabella shifted to video, Damien Cade in his office, speaking to someone off camera. Time-stamped, authenticated, damning. "Isabella Moriyama is a problem that needs to disappear," video Damien said. "I don't care what it costs. Ruin her credibility, plant evidence if necessary. Make sure no one ever believes her again." The ballroom fell into shocked silence. Real Damien, restrained by security at the stage steps, went pale. "That video it's fabricated. Deep-fake technology. Verified by 3 independent forensic analysts," Miguel interrupted, holding up documentation, "along with metadata confirmation and voice pattern analysis. It's you, Mr. Cade. Your words. Your crime." Helena stepped forward, her tablet connected to the main screen. "I have additional evidence. Wire transfers from Damien Cade's offshore accounts to a document forger in Osaka. 13 payments over 3 years, totaling $400,000. Each payment corresponds to a fraudulent contract." The screen displayed bank records, account numbers, routing information, recipient details. The Japanese delegation's translator was speaking rapidly to his superiors, their expressions shifting from shock to outrage. "The timeline proves systematic fraud," Miguel continued, advancing the presentation. 4 companies, 5 years, $320 million in attempted theft. Wright Global was meant to be number 5. Documents cascaded across the screen, contracts from each company, showing the identical pattern. Same forged seals, same shell company structures, same architect of destruction. Alexander stepped to the microphone, his voice resonant with authority. "Effective immediately, Wright Global is severing all business relationships with Damien Cade. Furthermore, we're cooperating fully with international law enforcement to ensure criminal charges are filed." "You're making a mistake," Damien shouted, still struggling against security. "I built your Asian partnerships. I saved your company from a crisis you manufactured." Alexander's words were ice. "We traced the hostile takeover 3 years ago. The investors who saved us. Shell companies you controlled. You created the problem so you could solve it and gain my trust." The screen shifted again, showing email communications between Damien and the fake investors. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Damien's face twisted with rage. "None of this would exist without me. I built this empire. You're nothing but—" His own voice cut him off. The screen showed text messages, Damien to an unknown number, timestamped 2 weeks ago. "Alexander Wright is an arrogant fool who trusts too easily. Once I have his company's money in the Cayman accounts, I'll disappear and let him take the fall. Isabella Moriyama was weak. He'll be easier." The ballroom erupted. Journalists surged forward, cameras flashing. The Japanese delegation stood as one, their spokesman approaching the stage. "Wright Global has our complete support in pursuing justice," he announced in accented English. "We will provide all documentation from the Tokyo investigation.
Mr. Cade destroyed good people. This ends now. Police officers entered the ballroom, real ones, not just security. They approached Damien with handcuffs, reading him his rights. His designer tuxedo suddenly looked like a costume. His confidence shattered into fragments. "You can't do this," Damien said, but his voice had lost its power. "I have lawyers, connections. You have nothing," Isabella said quietly, but her words carried across the silent room. "You built everything on lies, and lies collapse eventually." The officers handcuffed Damien, metal clicking shut with finality. Camera flashes turned the moment into strobe light fragments. Journalists shouted questions. Damien tried to respond, but his words were lost in the chaos as police led him toward the exit. Isabella watched him go. This man who'd destroyed her life, who'd haunted her nightmares for 3 years. She expected to feel triumph, victory. Instead, she just felt empty. And then, slowly, light. The weight she'd carried for so long was gone. Alexander returned to the microphone, waiting for silence. When it came, his voice was raw with emotion. "I failed Isabella Moriyama," he said. "When she tried to warn me, I dismissed her, humiliated her. I chose the lies of a manipulator over the truth from someone trying to save me." He turned to Isabella, and she saw genuine anguish in his expression. "I am profoundly sorry." Then Alexander Wright, CEO of a billion-dollar company, did something Isabella never expected. He dropped to one knee. The ballroom collectively gasped. "You saved my company, my reputation, and possibly my life," Alexander said, looking up at her. "You risked everything when you owed me nothing. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it." Isabella's breath caught. Cameras captured every moment, the CEO kneeling, the woman he'd wronged standing above him. It would be on every news site by morning. But right now, Isabella only saw the man who'd finally chosen to believe her. She extended her hand. Alexander took it, and she helped him stand. The applause started slowly, then built into a thunder that shook the chandeliers. Helena was crying. Miguel was grinning. The Japanese delegation bowed respectfully. "You're going to make this right," Isabella said quietly, "for Alexander alone. Not just for me, for everyone Damien hurt." "I will," Alexander promised. "Starting now." He raised her hand, presenting her to the crowd, no longer a waitress, no longer a victim, but a hero who'd refused to stay silent. The cameras flashed. The world watched. And Isabella Moriyama finally stepped out of the shadows and into the light. The private salon off the main ballroom was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd left behind. Isabella sat on a leather sofa, still trembling slightly from adrenaline, while Alexander poured water from a crystal pitcher with hands that weren't entirely steady either. "I don't know how to do this," Alexander said, sitting across from her. Not beside her, respecting distance. The apology part, the being wrong part. Isabella took the water glass, studying him. Without the stage lights and cameras, he looked younger, vulnerable. "Why is it so hard for you?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, turning his own glass in his hands. "My parents died when I was 26. Plane crash. Sudden. The company was chaos, vultures circling, board members fighting for control. I was terrified." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "So I taught myself not to be. I built walls, made arrogance into armor. If I was always certain, always right, no one could question me. No one could take what was mine. But that armor made you blind," Isabella said gently. "Yes." The word was heavy. "Damien knew exactly how to use it against me. He played to my paranoia, my need for control. And I let him because trusting him was easier than admitting I might be wrong." Isabella set down her glass. "I lied to you too, about who I was, what I'd done. You were protecting yourself. So were you." Isabella's voice softened. "We're both fighting ghosts, Alexander. You're fighting the fear of losing control. I'm fighting the fear of never being believed." Damien weaponized both. Alexander leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "How do we stop fighting ghosts?" "I don't know if we do. Maybe we just learn to fight together instead of alone." The door opened. Helena entered, her makeup streaked from tears, and immediately crossed to Isabella. She pulled her into a fierce embrace that Isabella hadn't expected and didn't quite know how to return. "Thank you," Helena whispered. "You saved my brother. You saved the company. You saved people we'll never even know about." She pulled back, holding Isabella's shoulders. You're extraordinary. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise. Isabella's throat tightened. I just told the truth. The truth requires courage, Helena said, especially when the world has punished you for it before. Miguel appeared next, his camera finally off, looking exhausted and satisfied. I've already filed preliminary stories with 3 major outlets. By morning, this will be international news. Isabella, I need your permission to use your full story, including Tokyo. I'll give you editorial oversight. Why? Isabella asked. Because your story isn't just about fraud. It's about what happens when institutions fail whistleblowers, when power protects predators. Miguel's expression was serious. I can tell it with respect and accuracy. Or someone else will tell it without either. Your choice. Isabella looked at Alexander, then Helena, then back to Miguel. Tell it truthfully, all of it. If this helps even one person speak up, it's worth it. Miguel nodded, respect clear in his expression. You'll have drafts by next week. Isabella reached into her purse and pulled out the USB drive, the evidence she'd hidden behind a loose tile for 3 years. This belongs in Right Global's official records now. Legal evidence, properly archived. Alexander took it carefully, like it was fragile. I'll personally ensure it's secured. And Isabella, he hesitated, I want to rebuild trust with you. I know I destroyed it, but if you're willing, one step at a time. No expectations, no pressure. Isabella studied his face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw and real. She recognized it because she felt it too, the vulnerability of choosing to trust again after betrayal. One step at a time, she agreed. But Alexander, I need you to understand something. I'm not broken. I don't need saving. I need partnership, equality. I understand. Alexander's voice was steady, and I'm asking for the chance to prove I can offer that. Helena was smiling through tears. The board is meeting tomorrow. We're implementing immediate reforms, mandatory fraud training, anonymous whistleblower protections, independent oversight for all international contracts. No more closed-door deals. No more trusting without verifying. Good, Isabella said, because Damien wasn't an anomaly. These systems exist because they're profitable. Changing them means changing everything. Then we change everything, Alexander said simply. Over the next hour, they talked through logistics. Miguel would coordinate with international investigators. Helena would oversee internal reforms. Alexander would testify personally against Damien if criminal charges proceeded. Isabella would consult, paid professionally, with a formal contract that respected her expertise. As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion settled in. Isabella stood, smoothing her dress. I need to go home. Process all this. Let me drive you, Alexander offered. I can take the bus. Isabella. Alexander's voice was gentle. Please. It's late. And after tonight, there will be journalists looking for you. Let me at least make sure you get home safely. Isabella hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but just this once. I'm not some damsel who needs constant rescuing. I know, Alexander said. You're the woman who rescued me. The drive was quiet. When they reached Isabella's apartment building, shabby in the darkness, Alexander walked her to the door but didn't ask to come up. Thank you, he said simply, for everything. Isabella looked at him, really looked. This man who'd humiliated her, then knelt before her, who'd been arrogant, then vulnerable, who was trying, genuinely trying to be better. Don't thank me yet, she said. We still have a long way to go. I know. But for the first time in years, I actually want to make that journey. Isabella allowed herself a small smile. One step at a time. One step at a time, Alexander agreed. The next morning, Isabella returned to the Sunset Diner for her final shift. The owner hugged her, tears in his eyes, already having seen the news. She served coffee one last time, said goodbye to regulars who'd never known her real story, and walked out into sunshine that felt different somehow. Cleaner, brighter, free. 6 months later, Isabella Moriyama stood in her new office, sleek glass walls, a view of downtown Los Angeles, her name on the door in elegant lettering, Moriyama Consulting, Corporate Fraud Investigation and Compliance. The business had grown faster than she'd imagined. 3 corporate clients in the first month, 7 by month 3. Now she was turning down work, being selective about cases that genuinely needed her expertise rather than just her famous name. Alexander had provided the initial funding, a proper investment, With contracts reviewed by independent lawyers Isabella had chosen. He owned no voting shares, made no decisions, simply believed in what she was building. "You're allowed to succeed," he'd said when she'd hesitated about accepting. "And I'm allowed to invest in people I believe in." Their relationship had evolved slowly, carefully. Coffee meetings that became dinners, professional discussions that revealed personal truths. He told her about his parents, his fears of inadequacy. She told him about Tokyo, about the nights she'd considered giving up entirely. They didn't rush. Both understood that trust rebuilt slowly, brick by careful brick. Helena had thrown herself into her own mission, the right foundation for corporate whistleblower protection. She provided legal support, counseling, and financial assistance to people who'd lost everything for speaking truth to power. Isabella served on the advisory board, helping identify authentic cases and weed out fraudulent claims. "Damien created so many victims," Helena had said at the foundation's launch. "We're going to make sure every single one gets justice." Damien Cade's trial had been swift and brutal. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic accountants traced over $320 million in fraudulent contracts across 7 years. 4 countries filed charges. The judge showed no mercy. 15 years in federal prison. Complete asset forfeiture. His name became synonymous with corporate fraud, featured in business school case studies as a cautionary tale. Isabella had attended the sentencing, not for revenge, but for closure. When Damien was led away in handcuffs, she felt nothing, no satisfaction, no lingering anger. Just the quiet peace of a chapter finally ended. Miguel Torres's investigative series won International Journalism Awards. The Invisible Whistleblower, How Isabella Moriyama Exposed a Global Fraud Network, ran in 12 languages, sparking policy debates about corporate accountability worldwide. Isabella gave interviews carefully, not to capitalize on fame, but to advocate for systemic change. She spoke at conferences, taught workshops, became the voice for people who'd been silenced. The Japanese business community had responded with particular intensity. A formal delegation visited Los Angeles, presenting Isabella with a letter of commendation for her technical precision, cultural respect, and unwavering integrity. They invited her to speak at Tokyo's International Compliance Summit. "Will you go?" Alexander asked one evening over dinner. A quiet restaurant, corner booth, the kind of privacy they both needed. "I think so," Isabella said. "It's time to face that chapter properly, on my terms." Alexander reached across the table, his hand open, an invitation, not a demand. Isabella took it, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'd like to come with you," Alexander said, "if you want company. Not as your whatever I am, just as someone who wants to support you." Isabella smiled. "What are you exactly?" "Hopefully, someone you're falling in love with as slowly and carefully as I'm falling for you." The honesty made her breath catch. They'd avoided labels, afraid of rushing. But sitting there, hands linked across a restaurant table, Isabella realized the truth. "I think I already have," she admitted. "Fallen for you, despite everything, maybe because of it." Alexander's smile was sunrise bright. "Good, because I have a question. Which is, would you consider traveling to Japan with me? Not for the summit, although that too, but for us. A fresh start in the place where everything went wrong. Show the world and yourself that you're not defined by what Damien did. You're defined by how you rose from it." Isabella thought of her tiny apartment, finally renovated, the loose tile replaced, a proper security system installed. She'd made it a home instead of a hiding place. The Sunset Diner had framed a newspaper clipping showing her at the gala, hanging it prominently behind the counter. "Local hero exposes 100mm fraud," the headline read. Customers asked about it constantly. Her consulting firm was thriving, her reputation rebuilt, her name restored. But more than any of that, she was free. Free from fear, free from shame, free to write her own story instead of living in the shadow of someone else's lies. "Yes," Isabella said, squeezing Alexander's hand. "Let's go to Japan, together." 3 weeks later, they stood in Tokyo's Shibuya district, rain falling softly around them, different rain than Los Angeles, cleaner somehow. Isabella wore professional attire for the summit tomorrow, but tonight they were just 2 people walking through a city that held both trauma and possibility. "How does it feel?" Alexander asked. "Being back?" Isabella looked up at the neon lights reflecting off wet pavement, the crowds flowing around them like water, like reclaiming something that was stolen, like proving that I'm stronger than what tried to break me. You are, Alexander said quietly. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Isabella leaned into him, allowing the gesture. This man who'd learned vulnerability, who'd chosen growth over pride, who'd become someone worth loving. I used to think my story was about loss, Isabella said, about what Damien took from me. But that's not true. My story is about what I took back. My voice. My truth. Myself. Alexander kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. And I'm grateful I get to be part of this chapter. Just this chapter? Isabella teased. Every chapter you'll let me read, Alexander corrected. They walked through Tokyo together, two people who'd learned that justice required courage, that love required vulnerability, and that the greatest victory wasn't destroying enemies but refusing to let them define you. Behind them, the past faded. Ahead, the future gleamed bright as neon in the rain. Isabella Moriyama smiled. She was finally, completely, triumphantly herself, and her story, the real one, the one she wrote, was just beginning. The end. If you enjoyed Isabella's journey from silence to strength, subscribe and share this story. Truth deserves to be heard. Heroes deserve to be celebrated, and everyone deserves a second chance to reclaim their voice.